Vasilisa the Beautiful. In a certain kingdom there lived a merchant. For 12 years he lived in a marriage and survived only one daughter, Vasilisa the Beautiful. When the mother passed away, the girl was 8 years old. Dying, the merchant called her daughter to her, took out a doll from under the blanket, gave it to her and said, "Listen, Vasilisa. Remember and fulfill my last words. I am dying, and with parental blessing I am leaving you this doll. Always take care of it with you, and do not show it to anyone. And when what grief happens to you." Then the mother kissed her daughter and died. After the death of his wife, the merchant shook, as it should, and then began to think how to get married again. He was a good man. The business of the brides was gone, but most of all he liked one widow. She was already in her years, had her 2 daughters, almost 1-year-old Vasilisa, and therefore, both the mistress and the experienced mother. The merchant married the widow, but was deceived, and did not find in her a good mother for his Vasilisa. Vasilisa was the first beauty in the whole village. Her stepmother and sisters envied her beauty, tormented her with all kinds of work, so that she would lose weight from labor, and blacken from the wind and the sun. There was no life at all. Vasilisa endured everything meekly, and every day she grew. The doll eats, and then she gives her advice, and comforts her in grief, and in the morning he does all the work for Vasilisa. She just rests in the cold and tears flowers, and she already has ridges and watered, and the cabbage is watered, and the water is applied, and the stove is flooded. The doll will also point to Vasilisa, and the grass from the tan. It was good for her to live with a doll. Several years have passed. Vasilisa grew up and became a bride. All suitors in the city are assigned to Vasilisa. No one will look at her stepmother's daughters. The stepmother is angry more than ever and answers all the grooms, "I will not betray the least before the elders." And spending the grooms, beat out the evil on Vasilisa. Once, a merchant needed to leave home for a long time on business matters. The stepmother moved to another house for living, and near this house she goes and trembles. Suddenly her horseman gallops past. He is white, dressed in white, the horse under him is white, and the harness on the horse is white. In the yard it began to dawn. She goes further, as another rider jumps. He is red, dressed in red, and on a red horse. The sun began to rise. Vasilisa went all night and all day. Only by the next evening she went out into the clearing, where the hut of a Yaga woman stood. The fence around the hut is made of human bones. Human skulls with eyes stick out on the fence. Instead of doors at the gates, human feet. Instead of constipation, hands. Vasilisa was stunned with horror and became rooted to the spot. Suddenly, a rider rides again. He is black, dressed in all black, and on a black horse. He jumped to the gates of the woman Yaga and disappeared. As he fell through the ground, night fell. But the darkness did not last long. All the skulls on the fence lit up their eyes, and the whole meadow became light, as in the middle of the day. Vasilisa trembled with fear, but, not knowing where to run, she remained in place. Soon a terrible noise was heard in the forest. The trees cracked, dry leaves crunched. Baba Yaga left. I drove up to the gate, stopped, and, sniffing around me, screamed, "Foo, foo! It smells of Russian spirit." "Who is there?" Vasilisa approached the old woman with fear and, bowing low, said, "It's me, grandmother." "Good," said Baba Yaga. "I know them. Live ahead and work for me, then I will give you fire. And if not, so I will eat you." Then she turned to the gate and cried out, "Hey, my constipation is strong, open up. My gates are wide, open." The gates opened, and the woman Yaga drove in, whistling. Vasilisa came in behind her, and then again everything was locked. Entering the room, the Baba Yaga sprawled and said to Vasilisa, "Give me here what is in the oven, I want to eat." Vasilisa lit a torch from those skulls on the fence and began to drag dishes from the stove and serve Yaga, and about 10 people cooked up the dishes. She brought kvass, honey, beer and wine from the cellar. She ate everything. The old woman drank everything. Vasilisa left only a little peck, a slice of bread. Ranashanka woke up Vasilisa, and the woman Yaga had already stood up, looked out the window. Her skulls were going out. Then a white horseman flickered, and it dawned. Baba Yaga went out into the yard, whistled, a stupa appeared in front of her with a pestle and broomstick. The red horseman flashed, the sun rose. Baba Yaga sat in a stupa and left the yard, chancing with a pestle, sweeping the trail. Vasilisa was left alone, examined the house of the woman Yaga, marveled at the abundance in everything and stopped and thought, what kind of work should she do first of all? He looks, and all the work has already been done. The chrysalis picked from wheat the last grains of Nigella. "Oh, you, my deliverer," said Vasilisa to the doll. "You saved me from trouble. You only have to cook dinner," answered the doll, reaching into Vasilisa's pocket. "Cook up with God and rest on your health by evening." Vasilisa gathered on the table and waits for woman Yaga. It began to get dark, a black horseman flickered behind the gate, and it got completely dark, only the eyes of the skulls shone. The trees cracked, the leaves crunched, Baba Yaga was going. Vasilisa met her. "Is everything done?" Yaga asks. "Please see yourself, Grand." The doll ate and said to her yesterday, "Pray to God and go to bed. The morning is wiser than the evening. Everything will be done." Vasilisa the next morning, the Baba Yaga again left in the stupa from the yard, and Vasilisa with the doll completely corrected all the work. The old woman returned, looked around and shouted, "My faithful servants, hearty friends, squeeze butter out of the poppy seeds." 3 pairs of hands appeared, grabbed the poppy, and carried it out of sight. Baba Yaga sat down to dinner. She eats, and Vasilisa stands silently. "Why don't you say anything to me?" said the Baba Yaga. "Are you dumb?" "I didn't dare," answered Vasilisa. "And if you will, I would like to ask you what." "Ask, only not every question leads to good. You will know a lot. You will grow old soon. I want to ask you, Grand, here's a fire for stepmother's daughters. Take it, because they sent you here for this." Vasilisa set off running in the light of the skull, which went out only when morning arrived, and finally, by the evening of another day, she reached her home. Approaching the gate, she wanted to throw a skull. That's right, at home, she thinks to herself, they don't need fire anymore. But suddenly a dull voice came from the skull. "Do not leave me, bring to the stepmother." She glanced at her stepmother's house and, not seeing a spark in any window, decided to go there with the skull. For the first time they met her affectionately and said that since she left, they had no fire in the house they themselves couldn't carve out, and which fire they brought from their neighbors. It went out as soon as they entered the room with it. Towards the end of winter, the fabric is woven so thin that you can thread through a needle instead of a thread. In the spring, the canvas was bleached, and Vasilisa said to the old woman, "Sell, grandmother, this canvas, and take the money for yourself." The old woman looked at the goods and gasped, "No, child. There is no one to wear such a cloth except the king. I'll carry it to the palace." The old woman went to the royal chambers, and everything walks past the windows. The king's son asked, "What do you need, old woman?" "Your royal majesty," the old woman replies, "I brought a strange product. I don't want to show anyone, besides you." The king ordered the old woman to be allowed in, and when he saw the canvas, he was surprised. "What do you want for it?" the king asked. He had